Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland, where we are devoted to conversations of consequence that help democracy thrive. It's Wednesday, August 14th, and I'm Abby Marshall, reporter and producer for IdeaStream Public Media and moderator for today's conversation, which is the final forum in the City Club's free outdoor summer series underneath the chandelier right here at Playhouse Square. So welcome. Today, we are digging into Universal Basic Employment, or UBE, not to be confused with Universal Basic Income, or UBI, made popular by former presidential candidate Andrew Yang. UBE is a jobs guarantee program, and as it turns out, the idea of a jobs guarantee gained momentum in the 1940s with President Franklin D. Roosevelt's Second Bill of Rights. As the second poorest major city in America, Cleveland is looking to reduce poverty and the need for public assistance by guaranteeing a well-paid job. And now, the city of Cleveland will become the first city in the nation to launch a UBE pilot program. Here with me today to discuss what we can expect to learn from this pilot program are a few folks at the helm. Devin Cotton, founder and CEO of Universal Basic Employment and Opportunity. Ward 7 Councilwoman Stephanie House-Jones with Cleveland City Council, and Ken Surratt, the Chief Development and Investment Officer at the United Way of Greater Cleveland. If you have any questions for our speakers, you can text it to 330-541-5794. That's 330-541-5794, and a City Club staff will try to work it into the second half of the program. Members and friends of the City Club of Cleveland, please join me in welcoming our guests here today. So first of all, thank you all for being here. We talked a little bit about what UBE is, but let's just start with the basics. Devin, in the simplest terms, can you explain to us what Universal Basic Employment is?
Yes, I can definitely do that. First, I want to say thank you to Dan, his team, and all of you all that have come out here to join us for this conversation. So I appreciate you all for joining us and giving us an opportunity to move a new innovation here in Cleveland forward. So Universal Basic Employment, I'll start with our mission. Our mission is to demonstrate that a federal jobs guarantee policy can eliminate poverty and be a stop payment on its many symptoms. We do that by elevating 100 under and unemployed Clevelanders up to a guaranteed income of $50,000 for 3 years to demonstrate that UBE, or jobs guarantee, is a simultaneous investment in people, place, and business. So that's all the boilerplate stuff. Now, in practical sense, UBE imagines a world where a single mother with 2 kids can walk down East 79th and go work at her local grocery store, childcare center, church, and make a $50,000 salary and walk back up the street to a home that she owns, because that salary now gives her the opportunity to qualify for a mortgage. It gives her an opportunity for her and her neighborhood to live in a neighborhood of choice, because now advantageous private firms want to be able to solve the symptoms of poverty, like digital divide, food apartheid, and different things like that. So it's bringing people back in partnership with the economic opportunities that we have and investments from our private sector, and eliminating the many opportunities where people have lost dignity in historically low wage work, have lost their agency because of benefit cliffs and things like that, and giving people the opportunity to thrive and move forward. What we're on a path right now is shifting government investments from reactive responsiveness to proactive solutions that, again, dignify work, reinvigorate a local tax base, and give it the opportunity to every neighborhood to be a neighborhood of choice.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And we mentioned it at the top. This can sometimes be confused with UBI. Can you just make that differentiation for us really quickly?
Yeah, so Universal Basic Income gives a preset amount of money every month, or whatever cadence they decide, to everyone or a segment of the population, with their opportunity to. There we go. Oh, my bad. For the opportunity to solve poverty, but more so income volatility. When that $500 emergency comes up, you have this universal basic income to solve that issue. Universal basic employment gives an opportunity for people to have the gold standard of agency, which is an earned income, gives people the opportunity to be the because of and writing their own story. In a Cleveland example, I think UBI moves people from Central, it changes Central into turning into Kinsman into Mount Pleasant and things like that, but unfortunately doesn't give a chance to solve the symptoms of poverty. And what we're planning here with UBE is an opportunity to, again, dignify historically low wage work and give people the agency to navigate the needs and wants as they see fit.
And last question for you before we move on to some of the other great guests we have here. But how did this come up? Like, can you walk us through your background and the things that you have seen in your work and what kind of brought you to this idea?
Yeah, so I've had the privilege of working in community development for almost 7 years on both sides of the river. I worked at Burton Carr in Central Kinsman, Buckeye, where you saw community development and the need so great and immediately, and then was across the river and worked in Old Brooklyn, where you saw a middle neighborhood trying to figure out what investments and what does it mean to leverage future investments. And I realized that our government's spending a lot of money, neighborhood organizations are spending a lot of money, philanthropy is spending a lot of money, but again, it's not solving the critical issues that we have. You know, poverty is one of the greatest anchors, and it's one of the greatest anchors for our city. And so wanting to find a solution that reimagines, again, the way that government is spending the same amount of money, have those budgets of poverty talk to each other. So the county looks at one number, the state looks at a number, the federal government looks at another number, and then the city looks at another number, all related to poverty. So being able to calculate the direct and indirect cost of poverty and measure those together and be able to use that pot of money to solve the issues of poverty that we see today.
Great. So Ken, can you describe, kind of backing up, what the problem is? Can you explain the scope of poverty within Cleveland and Cuyahoga County?
Sure. So first, just some context. Like when we think about poverty, I think we often forget that what it really is a measure of income. That's simple, right? A measure of actual income. And so what UBE is trying to do, right, is raise people's income. And when we look at just kind of our county, United Ways across the country publish a report. We call it the ALICE report, and ALICE is an acronym. It stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. So these are people who actually make above what the poverty level, federal poverty levels is, but don't necessarily make enough to actually pay for the day-to-day living and wherever they live. You know, it's two different measures. So here in Cuyahoga County, our poverty rates, you know, looking at households, about 17%. When looking at the ALICE population, it's actually 25%. So we have not only people who are you know, living below that poverty rate, but want to, you know, meet that federal threshold, but are still struggling to get by. That probably earn under this $50,000, and that could really help getting to that number, help them actually be able to live and thrive within this community.
So Councilwoman House Jones, can you talk a little bit why this was appealing to you when you and Devin connected, and the role that you see local government playing in a program like this?
Yeah, so I guess for context, before being a council member, I was a state representative for 7 years. I represented then, which is still now, the poorest district in the state of Ohio. We hear about poverty and not understanding that the poorest district in the state of Ohio is here in Cleveland. And it has been this way for generations. And then we had a global pandemic, which we are still dealing with that realities. And so when things happen, you just have shifts, right? And, you know, Devin and I had conversations, you know, because I was a person, you know, who was really thinking like, yeah, universal basic UBI, universal basic income, like stimulus dollars. People talk about that. We talk about the earned childhood tax credit, you know, additional supplements that are given to people, and we know it helps, right? And having a conversation with Devin back then, and I'm just like, wait a minute, universal basic employment? I'm in the state of Ohio, thinking about how policy, like what could really get us, what could actually work. I do believe that we are in a place, city, county, state, where people are more can digest investing in business for the benefit of people versus just directly giving money to people. I mean, I try to work to be realistic. And again, I really am looking for opportunities to change our system that can get us to a better results, because no one can tell me right now this is the best that we can do. Anybody think this is the best we can do? Because I would love to talk to you, right? This is not the best that we can do. And so I do believe that our future, our present and our future is worth exploring real different opportunities. And then a lot of times, you have the skeptics that will be like, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Well, nothing that we've done currently is currently working. So why not? Yeah, and yes, we are trying to raise $21 million. And if at the end of the day, it doesn't work, at least we had the courage to try, because what we're currently doing is not working.
So let's talk about that $21 million program a little bit and getting into the nuts and bolts. What exactly is the proposal that came through council, and now what is the program and the facilitation with United Way? If we can...
Yeah, so when we think about Cleveland City Council, I want to give a shout out to Council President Blaine Griffin. He is back there in the back. Y'all give him y'all give him a round of applause. For real, for real, for real, for real. For real, for real, for real. This thing called policy does not happen if you don't have the people leading to say yes when a lot of people say no. So the initial thing, it's a two-phase approach. So currently right now, Cleveland City Council invested $600,000 specifically to help with the design, right? We are talking about designing what this pilot program is going to look like, identifying what businesses will be willing to allow the public basically to be in your business, look at your practices, look at your taxes, all of those things, right? Because if we say we're going to give you $50,000, we're going to give you a business $250,000, we need to have willing partners that are going to say, yes, I'm an open book. You can see everything, right? And then from there, we are putting together systems of support. It's not just a matter of giving or having the partnership where someone can earn $50,000. It's also having the actual support to live life. There is a real transition that you have to have if you have been on the brinks of life or getting a little bit of public assistance, and now you have to do it all of yourselves. It is irresponsible not to be in partnership with people and support them in that journey. So again, taking our initial $600,000 is the seed money for the broader $21 million, which will be $15 million directly to the checks of the minimum $50,000, and then the other for the support services. And then Devin can talk about that.
Yeah, so that's the support services, as the councilwoman outlined, are, again, helping someone thrive past what does it mean to bridge past the benefits cliff, as she articulated that it's really, really hard. It's why 40 million Americans have not done it yet. And so figuring out what it would look like to have all these systems talk to each other, figure out what are the HR supports that we need to be able to support a business to receive a $250,000 check and say, hey, that cashier that you had in your business, we're not going to pay for their salary, but we also need you to redirect that $13, $14, $15 an hour into paying for benefits. Because not only do we have a wage issue in this country, we have a job quality issue. Far too many people are working for 1, 2, 3 home health aid and X, Y, and Z home health aid, where they split 20 hours there and 25 hours there. And both of those companies are looking at each other and say, well, you don't work for me full time, so I'm not going to pay for your benefits. Or we have employees that are receiving benefits and they don't have another opportunity or another job that they can go to because another opportunity wouldn't pay them full-time benefits to provide healthcare, FMLA, PTO, and things like that to be able to be a full-time participant in their family and their own lives. So having the wraparound supports and understanding what those mechanisms look like are very, very important. And one of the first charges that the councilwoman, Ken, and our 14-member advisory committee gave to me was that we can't elevate people up to $50,000 and drop them back down to zero for the sake of research. So being able to sunset this pilot in a safe way that our pilot participants and our businesses are not affected, it's having the wraparound supports and re-credentialing support so that folks can reimagine what the next phase of their life looks like so that they're able to thrive in and say, hey, I've been in STNA because my cousin was a nurse and she got me hired into this job. And that's not really what I want to do, but she got me a job, so it works out. What do I actually want to do? And how can we put the supports in place? $5,000 in unrestricted dollars, because so many of our workers and friends and neighbors in Cleveland have $1,500 that they owe to whatever institution, or $2,000 that they owe to this private institution that they got themselves together, thought they were ready to go to school, but those little $3,000 are holding them back from getting the next opportunity. So having unrestricted dollars to kind of help remediate that situation, and then some recredentialing stipend scholarships for them to then reimagine what their life will look like after they've gone through this 3-year pilot.
Thank you for that. So we talked about how this is funding the design phase, that $600,000 from Cleveland City Council. Ken, what happens now? What is United Way's role? When can we look at when a pilot program might come to fruition?
2 years. That's that's the answer for that last question. But so what happens now, and why United Way is involved? Again, we are a national network, actually international network, and we believe that a lot of the resources that could come and help fund this this pilot aren't necessarily going to be local. We think that this is that there's people with some who could write some pretty large checks out there. And so I think having a United Way behind this pilot is part of that. But also we're here to support Devin in many ways. From the marketing, again, the local fundraising, as well as just the bookkeeping. UBE right now it was Devin for a long time. For 2 years, it was Devin. And now he has a support team behind him that I think can really make sure that we are prepared to go to this next level, go through this research and define and design phase, understand all the questions that people have in the community, to refine what the pilot could look like, to make sure that as successful as Devin said, we don't want to see anybody be worse off because of this. We aren't going to let anybody be worse off because of this. So we take this very seriously, and are just here to support the vision that Devin has.
So we're talking about 100 Clevelanders, correct? Making $50,000 a year. That's a relatively small group when we're talking about the entire population of the city of Cleveland. How do you measure what success looks like when you talk about a pilot program and seeing the benefits or the failures of the program? What are you measuring?
Yeah, we could pass the collection plate. Right now, I would love to do support all 130 Clevelanders that are currently living in poverty and run a pilot for literally everyone. But this is the most manageable pilot that we can run that has statistical significance. Again, our ultimate resting place is state and federal legislation. So being able to have a pilot in partnership with Cleveland City Council, in partnership with United Way, in partnership with Cleveland Philanthropy, shouts out to Deaconess Foundation sitting in the back there, to actually be able to get this thing off the ground. So wanting to be able to look at something manageable that gives us an opportunity to have the research and have the white paper at the end of the day. But what we're going to begin measuring are the qualitative and quantitative impacts of this pilot. So did a business flat out make more money? Did grocery store A go from making $1 million to $1.25 million, $1.5 million to $2 million because they had a stabilized workforce, and they're no longer paying for employee retention. They're no longer paying to rehire individuals. They're no longer dealing with a lack of engaged workforce. Did we see and have the opportunity to reverse chronic illness? Which is one of those, again, those symptoms of poverty that puts the burden on our public benefit system, begins putting a burden on our city and things like that. So being able to measure those quantitative and qualitative functions of the pilot to then show that, again, all these budgets aren't talking to each other, but we're realizing poverty at so many levels. And if we can measure what that impact is, then we can begin projecting out how much is this a cost saving to government, how much is that this is a cost saving to people's lives, and then also not necessarily just a cost saving, how much better does our city look? How much better do our neighborhoods look? You know what I mean? If everyone in a particular neighborhood in Cleveland made $50,000, we'd have all the grocery stores. Whatever internet provider would gladly dig up Kinsman Road, Huff, Central, and lay fiber optic cables to solve our digital divide issues, because they know that every resident could pay $49.99 a month for internet. So it's, again, bringing people back into concert with our economic system and beginning to show how we can project these things out on a larger scale.
I think an important part of this that you all have kind of touched on is the proactive approach to poverty instead of the reactive approach to poverty, especially as it relates to government. Councilwoman, would you like to talk a little bit about that and kind of explain why that is important?
So okay, everybody do me a favor. Close your eyes for me. Close your eyes. Now, with this question, how many of you think it is better to invest in people before crisis hit? Raise your hand. Open your eyes. Look around. You all know nobody is a policymaker, right? This is what we are trying to bring forth. It is much better to invest in people before crisis hits versus afterwards. In the city of Cleveland, our operating budget is $779 million, give or take. We spend 51% of our dollars on public safety. That's over $400 million. Do we think that that budget could be a little bit altered if we were investing to prevent the things that we are responding to? Yes, I think so, right? This is what I'm saying. Again, when you talk to people just in very regular ways, we can see it. And we're talking about every year. Everybody's budget in every municipality is growing. And it's growing to the things of crisis after the fact. You call the police, you call the EMS, you call the fire department after the bad things happen. When are we going to do the prevention? Real prevention. And we feel like, again, seeing is believing. And that's the reason why we are really soliciting people to become partners, invest with us, help us reach this $21 million to demonstrate what can happen. I'm a caregiver for my mother. All the things. But just last night, one of my mother's caregivers was talking about, oh man, I just got this second job. Like, this is real. How is it we have people who are doing what I've considered God's work? They are washing people up, cleaning people, feeding people, and they got to do two jobs in a system where we know everybody getting older. This is not so hard to grasp. We have to use the dollars that are in our system to help people not get into that place. Because if we don't, when we don't, 20, 30 years from now, we're trying to scramble dollars to figure out how we're going to take care of them. And we can do better. In a place with this much brilliance, in this place where we have so much, we can do better. So.
Thank you for that, Councilwoman. And one of the things that you mentioned were some of the types of jobs that people are working at for low pay. What kinds of jobs are we talking about ensuring people, these 100 Clevelanders, and then theoretically beyond that, assuming there would be any state or federal policy?
Yeah, so we're looking at a mix of jobs and a suite of jobs, because in order to, again, push towards the state and federal legislation that we're looking to get to, we have to be able to give a comprehensive look at multiple industries, be able to say, like, not only is this a solution for the STNA and the home health aid, but this is a solution for the grocery store, the corner store, the light manufacturing outfit. And part of why we focus so much on the direct care industry, it's because it's one of those industries that is, the wage was set by the federal government, not taking place here in Cleveland. You know what I mean? The reimbursement rate for Medicaid or Medicare or whatever insurance is set somewhere that's not here on Euclid Avenue. And so now Cleveland, from a city perspective, from a county perspective, from a neighborhood organization perspective, from a resident and neighbor peer-to-peer perspective, are dealing with the fact that somewhere very, very far from here, someone set that $13 is what we're going to reimburse for our STNA and home health aides. So looking at the direct care industry is why we can, I don't want to say pick on, is why we're thinking about that one so specifically, is because of the larger and the reverberating effects that we think it's going to have on policy decision and policy implications. But again, we want to look at jobs that are happening in community, happening in place, so that we can change the way that Main Street looks and have it look differently. Your churches, your grocery store, and these jobs that are so important in community, to having a refuge place for children to run inside, to sit and have daycare and things like that, to have a grocery store at 40th and Community College, because there's so many residents there in Arbor Park Village and Arbor Park Place and Arthway that need a grocery store. So where can we put this investment? Where can we look at jobs that are needed in community, that are needed in place? And also jobs that have the ability to hire Clevelanders. Small businesses, community-based organization, nonprofits, churches have the ability to say, hey, I know that happened. I know you have a felonious background, but I remember you. You were the kid that lived around the corner. I know your mom and I know your dad. So come over here and I can pay you $50,000 to have an entry-level job. So that means you have the opportunity to take care of yourself. You can take care of any children that you may have, and you have the opportunity to chart a pathway forward for yourself. So jobs that happen in community, jobs that happen on Main Street are so, so important, and they're critical to this pilot.
So as we talk about next steps, obviously United Way is going to be very heavy in this. We're going from a one-person team to having, the resources
200.
of United Way behind. Ken, can you talk a little bit about why you think this might be effective in Cleveland specifically, and going forward, what is going to be important for your team?
Sure. So at United Way, one of the things we do is really look for these types of partnerships. We feel that we have, where we sit in the community with our access to employers, to the government, and to funders, to the nonprofit sector, that we have the ability to make sure that there's access to all the important pieces that are going to be part of creating the solution. As Devin said, it's not just the employers. There's going to be wraparound services for folks, and we need to make sure that all those pieces are put in place for this. So, right now we are looking and charting paths with some local funders to try and make sure that we have all the resources to make sure the research and design phase are set. Really, at the same time, starting to branch out and research around the national funders, and as well as something else very important to as a next step is, when people ask, is this successful, we have to have that body of research. So making sure that we have that evaluation piece set up and designed so that we can be able to prove at the end of this pilot that UVE was effective.
And I know that we kind of touched on it briefly, what the ultimate goal of this program is, but I think it's important to note that the idea of permanence within Cleveland is not necessarily the goal. Can you all talk about what you would like to see come out of this pilot program? Because it's not a pilot program for establishment.
Yeah, no, I mean, from my perspective, and I guess collectively, we are looking to change city-state policy, specifically where government can be more proactive in investing directly to businesses to ensure that people have family sustaining wages. That is the goal. That is the focus. And again, having the partnerships with Cuyahoga County and the state of Ohio in particular are the nucleus to make this thing really work. We've had some initial conversations with the state. It's probably been a year and a half ago now, and now embarking on the journey to establish a relationship, understanding with the county and hopefully with the state to see what would that look like for us. Where you can see it in our budgets on a yearly or biannual basis of investment directly for people so that we can really change and transition and specifically uplift communities that have been just disinvested in and not had the true partnership so that people can have a good life here in our community.
Yeah, what we're starting here is the movement to demonstrate how can we create better economic guarantees? And so what we want to demonstrate is that is $55,000 the enough salary here in Cleveland, enough so that every small business can start their workday, enough that every neighborhood in Cleveland is a neighborhood of choice, enough that every Clevelander has the ability to take care of their family and navigate their needs and wants, and then have the opportunity to take it to other cities so we have a comprehensive suite of literature so we can look at what is enough in the Mississippi Delta. What does it mean to have enough for newcomers in large markets like San Francisco or New York? You know, stealing from the words of Council President Griffin, you know, having Cleveland be an innovator, have Cleveland be a leader in what it means to solve one of the greatest ills in our country, and that is poverty.
So where does the money come from, just on a basic level? Where do you envision that coming from? Public, private?
Yeah, it's a three-legged stool, if you will. It's a government, it's private philanthropy, and it's private donors. It's all of us working in concert with one another to reach the number to get to the 21 million necessary to change the trajectory of our country.
And I'm sure this isn't something you want to manifest,
Yes.
but what are potential downsides? Are there any? Do you see any? Do you think it's worth the risk of those potential downsides?
I've been asked this question a lot, and I've gotten better at it. As a crazy entrepreneur that is so like headstrong and down into the work, I'm like, there's no downside. But in my heart of hearts, I fundamentally, there's no downside to bridging people out of poverty. But what is important is us having the wraparound supports and having partnership in place to ensure and that we can look a mother in the eyes, we can look a father in the eye and say, hey, if you sign up to be a part of this pilot, we know your life is going to be better. So the importance is us taking the time over this 2 years to know that we have the right supports and mechanisms in place to be able to bridge people past the use of social safety net benefits. So not necessarily a downside, but a caution for safety, a caution to ensure that we're doing the right things, and a caution so that we're not necessarily just thinking about it from a research perspective, but we're thinking about it that we're going to change 100 families' lives.
We are about to begin the audience Q&A for our live stream audience, or those just joining us here in Playhouse Plaza. I'm Abby Marshall. I'm a reporter and producer for IdeaStream Public Media and moderator of today's conversation. We are talking about Universal Basic Employment, or UBE, with Devin Cotton, the founder and CEO of Universal Basic Employment and Opportunity, Ward 7 Councilwoman Stephanie House Jones with Cleveland City Council, and Ken Surratt, the Chief Development and Investment Officer at the United Way of Greater Cleveland. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, as well as our live stream audience at cityclub.org. If you'd like to text a question for our speakers, please text it now to 330-541-5794. That's 330-541-5794, and City Club staff will try to work it into the program. I see we already have someone prepared with a question, so if you'd like to ask it, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Name is Blue. My question has two parts. The first one is, in our area, at least city of Cleveland, we know lots of people have been blocking from true working opportunities and livable wages. So when government put out all kinds of programs to help people, supposedly, later we find out all these programs, sometimes they contradict one another. This is the reason why we have this term called benefit cliff, all those kind of things. So right now for this pilot program, do you see after pilots finished, if we really want to use the program as a regular program, would that cause a problem for ordinary people when they need to transition between the employment and the income? I'm talking about the UBE and the UBI. That's one. The other thing is that how would these two can work together to help the people out of poverty or help the people actually getting the job they like and they can contribute and also sustainable for the bigger picture. Thank you.
Thank you. So the first part of the question, we'll start with the benefits cliff, which I think, Devin, you briefly touched on, but you're talking about bringing people out of poverty to a $50,000 a year salary. And then when the pilot program is over, potentially losing out on that salary as it is going to no longer be funded.
Yeah, so that's the amazing work of the Atlanta Federal Reserve and their benefit calculator. We're able to see exactly what number it is that bridges people past the use of most social safety net benefits. We're going to keep that child care one in place because whether you make $20,000 or $120,000, child care is extremely extremely expensive and important. And so the $50,000 salary number shows on the Atlanta Federal Reserve benefit calculator that it bridges a single head of household with 2 kids past the use of social safety net benefits. So they're not dealing with that ebbs and flows of that, oh, I got this job and then I recertify for SNAP and now I lose X number of dollars in SNAP. We're getting folks all the way to that full agency number, what we're calling an autonomous wage.
And the second part of the question is connecting people with jobs that they actually like or care about.
Okay, so this is what I say, right? And this is just me. This is from my mama, right? Sometimes you have to do what you got to do so you can do what you want to do, right? And I'm just being real, and I do also think that sometimes the thing that pays you to take care of your life doesn't have to be the thing that fulfills you. There are other opportunities, hence, I have a degree in engineering, right? It was a means to an end. But I loved young people, so that gave me and provided me the opportunity to serve girls for 15 years in our community. That never paid me, but I loved it. And so trying to figure out how do we marry using what you actually can do that can be, some type of way to find some value to invest in and partnering people with things that are your interest is helpful. I just, sometimes you can't get everything all the time. So sometimes I think people have to be a little bit flexible so that we can exist and actually live a life and understand that it doesn't have to be both the same thing. That's just my opinion. That's my personal thing.
And if you're a full-time STNA or full-time cashier at a grocery store, having the resources to live outside of poverty gives you the freedom of to say, okay, I'm doing 40 hours a week of this, and the rest of my time I'm important to my community, my church, my family, and do the things that I want to do. But right now we have that fraction. We have a point of friction right now that folks don't have the resources in time to do what they want to do. And so we think if we can stabilize people through work, they have the other hours in their day to fulfill their passions and dreams. And also once you're stabilized, and I think about career pathways often, is that, okay, it's like, oh, if you're an STNA or home health aide, it's like, oh, the next thing to get to the land of milk and honey of self-sufficiency, you have to have this constant onus to re-credential to become an LPN. Because until you get to that point, you can't really do those things. So what we're doing is dignifying and stabilizing this work so there's not this constant onus to follow these career pathways, but staying where you choose to stay. And you can do this very, very meaningful work and then choose to self-select your life however you see after that.
I just want to go back a little bit to benefit cliffs because I think this is important. So we started this work around social determinants of work, really thinking about like 8 barriers that really preclude people from to entrance to work, but also moving up in work. And the benefits cliff is really a good intersecting point of all that. But there's really 2 levers that really need to happen. One is employers, right? Practices, right? There's things that are in employers' ability to be able to change things. The other is really around changing policy. And so I think through UBE, there's lessons learned. There's more information that we can explain and share to both employers and the policymakers. It's not the UB alone going to do it. Like we're going to need to constantly be moving in both kind of the policy arena to address those issues that you brought up, Lou, around benefit cliffs and how the benefits don't work together, as well as what can employers do to help address some of the challenges their workers have and that are within their control.
Yes, sir. Would you like to ask your question?
Good afternoon, everyone. Ronnie Cannon of Towards Employment. Please forgive me if I didn't hear it, but if you can take a moment just to speak about the subjects, the residents, what that process looks like for identifying who will be a part of the pilot program, it'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's you.
So the work starts first by, so we're going to anchor the pilot in a neighborhood or a neighborhood corridor. The reason that we're doing that is because we want to ensure that we're able to look at the full triple bottom line, people, place, and business. And so anchoring the pilot in a particular neighborhood allows us to see that, hey, if we put 100 stabilized individuals into Central, do we see more people showing up at community meetings? Do we see a street calming? Do we see more social and community cohesion? And so thinking about, do we see people be more engaged in our democracy? You know what I mean? And we have more voters and things like that. So we want to measure place first. And so that kind of gives us some geographical bounds. And then once we figure out, after we do a citywide scan, figure out where we should put this, where the biggest need and where the biggest investment should go, we then look within that place to figure out who are the business partners that we can work with and be in partnership with. And from there, we go through the very in-depth and deep conversations with each individual business to say, okay, how many of your employees can we elevate or be a part of the pilot? And then how many employees do we also need to add? And then once we figure out how many employees within the business that we can work with, then we begin to backfill with residents and neighbors and people within a particular neighborhood, and then go from there. So it starts with doing a citywide scan to figure out where the best location is to run this pilot, then figure out the businesses that we're going to partner with within that given neighborhood, and then begin to backfill with residents in that particular neighborhood to be a part of the pilot. And we have great partnerships in community development with Step Forward and other folks that we think we can have some ready-made solutions and partners to think about targeted residents that could be a part of the pilot as well.
Long story short, Ronnie, we have not picked the neighborhood yet. So once we pick the neighborhood in the city of Cleveland, that will be the ideal place where the people that are living in that neighborhood will be the people that will have the opportunity to be a part of the pilot UBE. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Great. Good afternoon, Brian Wright. I know we recognize this as a pilot program, but are there other programs it was based on, and do we have a sense, or similar programs that have taken place, and do we have a sense of what those outcomes were?
Yeah, so there's a lovely article that was just recently written about UBE in the Business Insider. And so Jobs Guarantee has been piloted in other countries around the world, India, Austria, Australia, I believe as well. And so, yeah, read all those studies, took in those ideas and those best practices. But no, this is an idea that's birthed out of Cleveland and birthed out of this partnership. And so, yeah, there are some best practices that we've taken from there. But all those pilots look at the government ebbing and flowing and flexing its muscles when the economy goes up and down. That's not necessarily a solution from a policy standpoint that we think will play well in our state, nor do we think it will play well in our country. But our state and our country are really, really good at subsidizing businesses. So using those best practices, we're crafting a solution that we think will play well here in Cleveland. So it's not one single piece of best practice. This is the nation's first jobs guarantee pilot. It's taking several thoughts and weaving them together to drive a solution for UBE.
Hello, my name is Micah Sedemeyer, and I work for supported employment, and it's an evidence-based practice. And one of our principles is kind of based off of zero exclusion, because we view work as recovery. And so what support, especially when they're poverty-stricken communities, what support will be in place for those who do have mental health or substance use disorder, because that is a lot of people in the inner city or poverty community. So what support will be in place for them as they're going into work?
About job coaches?
Yeah, I mean, so that's part of the thing. So that's part of the pilot program. It is the intention for us to have a social worker that's a part of it, as well as job coaches that can be in partnership with the pilot participants through the duration for 3 years. And then also, again, we look at this work as a cohort, right? So the 100 individuals who will be in the UBE pilot program, we hope that they will build relationships. So, because it's one thing to have the outside people, right, supporting you, but there's also a community that is developed, and we hope that we can facilitate those connections so that the pilot participants will be able to kind of informally bridge some of their own networks. And so as life is happening, good, bad, or indifferent, they are having that kindred spirit, because life just isn't designed for people to be alone, right? And that's one of the things we really want to be very intentional in ensuring that, you know, for people who are parents, they get to know each other. You can support each other. It makes all the difference in the world if it's a Friday night and you want to go kick it and you be like, hey girl, can you come watch my kids? You know, that's one of the things we need to bring those things back to our community. And we are hopeful that through the relationships and that will happen over the 3 years of the pilot, those things will be facilitated formally and informally to support people in life.
Yes.
Hi, Evan Tokatian, CSU student. In Ohio and across the country, there's an incredible shortage of workers in manufacturing, construction, vehicle and building maintenance. Most of these jobs are high wage and don't require a college degree. I'm wondering why this program seems structured towards subsidizing salaries at low wage jobs rather than investing the money in things like transportation, workforce training, or existing programs like Magnet to fill the job shortages we already have.
Yeah, so I think that's a thing of how we as a society consider low wage working, right? We as a society, trust me and believe me, if many of us get to a place where we are older, the work that certain people do and that they are compensated does not mean it is low value. And I think it's just a different value proposition that we are making at times. Because again, serving people who are very vulnerable should not necessarily be compensated, you know, to a disadvantage. And then you talk about some of the industries like construction, manufacturing. Many of those places have not necessarily been the best environments for people, right? Depending on the community that you're in, just being quite frank, right? I can talk to you about you know, some of the residents in Ward 7 who are in those industries that are not treated well, right? And some people, depending on what your experience in life has been get people necessarily to shy away. And I will say that the city of Cleveland is actually making a significant investment in what we know as the built environment. Just most recently, we have put in $10 million to help ensure, you know, with all the investment that is coming through the bipartisan infrastructure act, to ensure that we are connecting people to opportunities in our build and advanced manufacturing. We also know that that's not the only path, and we should be working to look and invest in all types of work, because again, work is work. And again, I think this is one of those things that a lot of times we as a society have gotten caught up into what type of degree you have and things of that nature, versus looking at what is the value. Is the value of a work helping to ensure that young people are learning, or that you're reducing, helping somebody recover faster? Like, there are all types of ways that we can look at value, not just what your initial training is, but what you actually can help produce in a work environment. And I think there's an opportunity for us to do a multitude of things because government has that responsibility. Go ahead.
Yeah, just one quick point, going back to what I mentioned, the social terms of work. It's really just examining what are those other barriers to that are preventing people from going to those whatever wage jobs, quite honestly. So, you know, is the training paid for? do they have the ability to find childcare to go through the training? Do they have the transportation available? Do they have the money to buy the tools to start off? So it's really just, I don't think it's necessarily excluding that. I think that there's, and even the environment, I think that Councilwoman mentioned could be a barrier for some people to enter it. I think each of those industries needs to just kind of re-examine that. And again, understanding what employers can do to help address those and wanting what are more systemic things that really it'll take policy to drive and change.
And I'll just add one quick thing is that this is just kind of a thought around how I look at workforce. I think part of one of the critical things around workforce and workforce development is just getting people back to work. A lot of times the jobs that you're talking about are the second or third opportunity for someone. You know what I mean? Becoming a skilled tradesman, as a son of a skilled tradesman, that's not necessarily the first opportunity. And Councilwoman represents the Cleveland Builds investment in thinking about the work that Cleveland Builds does. Our workforce might be ready and excited to take on certain opportunities. But there's a lot of retraining and gaps that need to be filled. And so I think getting someone into just the work environment and having, for the pilot, 3 years of demonstrated work experience would put them in a better position to then go get a CDL, then to go join an apprenticeship because they just haven't had that experience of being in work.
Our next question is a text question. It says, given that inflation is still a problem, what a sudden increase in wages cause upward pricing pressure, harming the people who are not receiving these wages?
Interesting. So this is the thing though, y'all. Like I really feel like hopefully we can open our minds to think that we are in community and we should not put or pit people against, like, well, if I've been working my life and getting $50,000, they didn't do what I did to get here, right? I don't have that, and I don't embrace that type of philosophy because it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with you. We are trying to support communities. You see what I'm saying? Like, I just encourage people, take a drive around Cleveland. And I mean, take a drive around Cleveland. Go to West Park. And again, I just recently met with my colleague, and I'm like, this Cleveland? I didn't even know I was in Cleveland. Because it's a different Cleveland than the Cleveland that I experienced versus if you go drive around in my neighborhood in Asiatown, St. Clair, Superior, and Huff. But the difference is the average household income over there is $52,000. The household income where I am is $20,991. It is going to make a difference in how our communities look. People need the resources. And that's, again, I'm coming to this thing of like, will it change or will it cause inflation to go up? I don't know. What I do know is when you have a concentration of people that are making more money, your communities, your neighborhood look a lot different. And that's where we're trying to go to.
Also, very quickly, we've seen multiple iterations of our economy at full scale through civilian conservation corps, through times of war and things like that. And we've thrived very well throughout those period of times. Also, the capacity of our economy to do more is because Kinsman doesn't have a coffee shop, because Central doesn't have a coffee shop, Huff doesn't have certain things filled in. So we have places in our economy that will, in my belief, will not cause inflation. Also, 100 people in a pilot won't shift the Cleveland market that much.
We have time for one last question if you have one more that was texted in.
Yes. Our last question is a tech question. The jobs you've mentioned seem somewhat limited: healthcare aides, cashiers, etc. We recently heard from Michael Jeans about a major EPA grant to bring solar energy to poorer communities. Could these efforts be combined to create a workforce for solar installation and maintenance?
I'm going to jump first because I know the councilman's going to bring it home on this one. The idea that you can write this jobs that you mentioned are somewhat limited is part of the work that we're doing in changing this perception around the work that people are doing. If you get up, go to work, and do literally anything for 40 hours a week, that is a real job, and it should be dignified and paid in a way as such that allows you to facilitate your life. There is no limitations. I would be a terrible STNA. I'd be a god-awful home health aide. These are very, very real jobs. And again, if we want to keep saying that they're limited, watch Mrs. Johnson get out of bed because her STNA or home health aide is late, fall and break her hip, and then have to run the Medicaid card because she fell and broke her hip. And now our emergency system, our ambulance, our insurance, and all these other things are paying for the fact that our STNA isn't paid enough money to show up on time because she has reliable transportation. This notion around that these are not real jobs or these jobs are limited, it's part of the movement and the work that we're doing right now. And I'll let the councilwoman and Ken finish this one up.
Yeah, I think because we are in a kind of research and design phase, there are opportunities to explore what could be possible. Within that, though, I also think that Cleveland in Northeast Ohio, as we look at our city, county, state partnership and thinking about where is Cleveland going, we are getting older, y'all, at a rapid pace. And the industries to support those who are aging are very real. And if we do not think about truly investing in that workforce for us that are getting older and aging, then people are going to live some very miserable lives here in the city of Cleveland. We really must think very differently because, again, if you're not making no money and you live longer, what is that going to look like? So.
Well, we have to end there. So thank you all. Thank you to Devin, Councilwoman, and Ken for joining us at the City Club today. The City Club Outdoor Summer Series is sponsored by Thompson Hine with additional support from Cliffs. It is also part of the City Club and the Community Series sponsored by Bank of America. Up next at the City Club this Friday, August 16th, the City Club will welcome Catherine E. Lehman, Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Education, to discuss protecting civil rights in K-12 and higher education. You can learn about each of these forums and what's next at the City Club at cityclub.org. Thank you once again to our speakers, and thank you members and friends of the City Club. I'm Abby Marshall, and this forum is now adjourned.